All right. Oil tanker news. Iran is sending oil tankers to Venezuela. And so we're going to take a look at the political oil situation, the oil war, the oil price war, and then we'll take a look at all of our favorite oil tankers and see what's happening here. So the big news now is that Iranian tankers are supposedly full of gasoline, and headed to Venezuela because they have fuel shortages there. And this is a huge international spark because the U.S. has sanctions on Iran and Venezuela, and um, they're enacting the Monroe Doctrine. The U.S. is enacting the Monroe Doctrine that's keeping people from, it's supposedly to stop people from interacting in the Western Hemisphere. This is like some doctrine from over 100 years ago. And Venezuela is giving military support to the incoming, gasoline tankers, and yeah, threatening military action if anything happens to those tankers coming in safely. And um, this is a big buzz. And then Russia and China also have interests in Venezuela. Well, Venezuela is one of the main big OPEC countries. It has some of the largest oil reserves on the planet, and no ability to extract the oil now because the economy is in tatters, and yeah, Venezuela is a mess right now. Um, yeah, so it's a big deal with sanctions, same kind of thing. Countries are sort of pushing the borders and going against sanctions, and two kind of I guess call them pariah states or something. Iran and Venezuela, which are OPEC countries, and um, yeah, it's just a big dramatic thing right now in the oil tanker space, um, but there's no like stock tickers or anything related to the Iranian oil tankers that are coming over, and so we'll see if this goes any further. But it's nothing new for Iran and Venezuela to trade. Like they've had trade relations for I think I read 20 years or something like that. Like this is not some new insane thing for them to just trade. But it is getting a big amount of I guess drama from the U.S. And China and Russia are saying the U.S. are intervening and doing operations and stuff like that. And Trump has said like, no, I wouldn't send like some little ops group. Like if we were gonna stop this from happening, it wouldn't be a little group. Um, so who knows what's actually going on? It's just a bunch of political drama. But it looks like Iran is sending some gasoline over to Venezuela, and that's the latest news in the oil war, which is hopefully doesn't escalate into an actual war. But right now, it just has mostly to do with oil prices and who's producing what. And Venezuela is still unable to really produce anything. And they're under heavy sanctions as well as Iran. And so that's the oil news. And I want to take a look at these oil tankers. I just did a video on the UCO, and my playlists have a ton of oil related videos here. And so yeah, if you go into my oil playlist, you can see the like the UCO and the USO kind of ETNs and ETFs, and then I have a ton of videos on all these tankers in there. And so the tankers, got this hypey blast here. And I like looking at TNK. This is Teekay Tankers because they have been good from the whole. Like here's the crash. I mean, TK has been a solid blue chip long through this entire stock market crash and the rebound. And now the last little up move in the stock market, and the oil tankers have been coming down off of this kind of hypey one or two tops that they got here. And TK is coming down too. And I've been looking for the spot to try to go long on these things. And we'll take a look. We'll take a look at the tankers. And this solid red bar down today does not make me excited to go long on the tankers today. I want to see. I think they're near a bottom, and you can kind of see it kind of smoothing out. But I also think that we have the risk of a little contraction here that could pull them down as well. And I don't know if the tankers would fight against that or not, but I think that's some downside risk. Let me look at the S&P and show you kind of the risk to the tankers right now and where I'm thinking about going long on some tankers. So on the S&P, I have this, I'm calling it the double rainbow, which is this circular shape here. And along the outer rainbow, we've been getting reactions across the top. On the inner rainbow, we've been getting these reactions across the bottom. We're kind of just popping back and forth across this thing. And so I think there's a good chance that we come down here. And the S&P has been tied very closely to the entire, international monetary system contraction throughout this whole crash. This is a monetary system contraction cycle, and it's 3 to 4 month contraction cycle, and we're still in this cycle as far as I know. I haven't seen any indication that we have exited this contraction cycle, so I'm just seeing high downside risk now, and so I see big downside risk here for the general S&P, and then I don't know. I was just looking at Tesla. Tesla looks like it's up at resistance. Oh, excuse me. And Tesla looks like a super risky spot right now. And oil just did like a 1 month like Elliott 5-wave up. I covered that in my last video. So oil, like the USO and the UCO, look really dangerous right now for a downward move. And these oil tankers should be opposite of all of that. But I think this is a potential downside risk in the general market. And let's go back to the Teekay, the TNK, the Teekay Tankers. And so if we get a move down, not necessarily vertical like that, but a general, a credit contraction down wave. Yeah, so here's TK, and we have this, this shape on TK here, and this TNK, because TK has several different divisions to their company, and the TNK is their tankers. And so I think this is a really, really cool. These are crude oil tankers, and it's a specific ticker symbol that targets specifically the crude oil tanker division of their company. And so I like this ticker a lot, and it has been very, very bullish throughout this cycle. Obviously, except for this swing down here is not a bullish swing down, but I think that the next week it's going to be really important to see if a down move in the S&P happens, and if that down move is pulling down on these tankers or not. And if it is, I think kind of that reversal point, wherever that might be next week, maybe, might be a good spot to go long on these tankers for the first time since the hype. And I mean, the tankers got a little bit of hype here, and they got crazy hype here, and they've had this huge reversal. But yeah, the news, TK came out and gave some news today, and they're saying everything looks super bullish. They're saying that there is oil oversupply still, and Frontline was saying that the oversupply should be peaking soon, probably, but there's still oversupply happening now, and the oil tankers are going to be necessary in the oversupply market for several months. And not only is using a bunch of oil tankers for crude storage is one thing, but they're also normal business is shipping, and so they're still shipping, and so there's way less tankers available for shipping, and so sort of both. I mean, using them just for crude storage is not generally what they do, and that's why the tanker stocks have hyped up. But now that they have unhyped, just the general business model looks pretty good for the foreseeable, midterm, I guess, probably for 2 or 3 months. It would need to be reevaluated. But if we get a down, tankers could be a good long on the next up move, because as you, well, probably not really with TK, but I'll take a look at some other tankers. Like TK has really resisted this crash and done their own thing. So let me look at, I guess, Nordic American Tankers and see what's happening with the crazy hypey Nordic American. This is everybody's favorite tanker company because their their CEOs just came out with these huge interviews like, oh my god, like the tanker industry is just going crazy. And he's like, there's so much money, we don't know what to do with it. He came out and said a bunch of stuff like that, and it got this crazy hypey. Um, let's take a look at this thing. Oh yeah, here's all the tankers. Teekay, double hull tankers, Nordic American. There's like tops. Yeah, I guess I could just talk about the tankers since I have all the tankers here. So TKN, TNK. That's a fail. Yeah. Anyways, we just looked at TK, which is the TNK, and there's DHT double hull tankers. NAT is Nordic American tankers. EuroNav, EURN, and FRO Frontline. These are all the crude oil tanker fleets, and DHT and NAT are the smaller fleets, and TK, EuroNav, and Frontline are the bigger fleets. And these are all the crude fleets that have been getting really big action in the crude situation. And then Scorpio, STNG, is a big product tanker fleet. And so I was wondering if the product tankers are going to get into crude storage if this oversupply keeps surging, and it's still increasing. And then there's like top ships who they're having really complicated like buyout, public offering, complicated stuff going on. But PXS is Pyxis, I guess, tankers. They're Greek, and those ones are a product fleet. So like PXS and STNG are interesting product fleets to consider if the oil supply does surge again, because you can use product fleets to store crude in this huge oversupply situation, and so they may be getting a bounce if that happens. And if the oversupply is less, then these crude tankers are looking better. And let me clear this off. And there's also Tsakos Tankers, which is kind of a mix of crude and uh, and there's Ardmore, which is a product fleet. And so let's see where we are. Where's Feb? Yeah, so Feb here. So Nordic American didn't get the huge blast since the beginning of the crash. They came down. They came down with the crash, and then on the bull market they went nuts. But these oil tankers peaked now, and we're back up here at a high on the S&P, and the tankers didn't come back up, none of them. And so, just looking at the general value direction of these things, it looks like it's getting close to a spot to buy tankers long. But I would want to do that in a spot where the S&P is going up. I want to see the tankers bottom and see the S&P reverse at the same time, and that could very well happen over the next week here. We might get, a bottom kind of reversal on the S&P the next week or two, and a bottom reversal on the tankers at the same time. And if that happens, there would be a very interesting long for, I don't know, maybe like a 2 week kind of swing trading long, because we're still in a credit contraction cycle. But yeah, Nordic American tankers went nuts, because they went from $2.30 to almost 9 or something. So I mean, they got a crazy hypey thing, and they went from really poor business to just like they're a smaller fleet. So I mean, they went from having hardly any business to completely slammed. And let's look at the double hull tankers, because that's a similar business model, and they weren't as low as Nordic American, I don't think, before this situation happened. Where's Fed here? Yeah. Oh, okay, so double hull tankers look. Okay, so yeah, all that stuff. All right, so yeah, they had a general up. It looks a lot like TK, and a straighter down that's not curving. TK is starting to curve. So I like looking at TK as sort of an indicator of how all the tanker companies are looking, because it's sort of the big blue chip one that I think has the most sort of direct access to this crude oil situation. And so I really like TNK and DHT, the double hull tankers, and NAT, the Nordic American tankers, are smaller crude fleets, and so they're more volatile, which is more interesting. I mean, if there's a good bottom for something like a call option or something, these ones may be more interesting because this one went from what, below 5 to not. I mean, Nordic went from like 3 to 9, and this went from like whatever 450 to almost 9. So it's pretty close. I mean, it's a pretty big jump, and also this one is up over the whole crash and also got a big swing. So DHT may be a little more stable than Nordic American, but Nordic American maybe would get a bigger upswing on the next upswing as well. And DHT, I would like to point out, has an ugly balance sheet. As far as all the crude tanker companies go, DHT is the ugliest crude balance sheet by a long shot. And that doesn't seem to be an issue at the moment because they just have tons of cash right now. But that's something to think about, I guess, as well with DHT. And then let's check out Frontline and EuroNav. So Frontline tankers, are they just wobbly? Oh, look, and they're coming back up already. That's interesting. Yeah, they didn't get it quite as big of a hypey thing, but they are long through the whole thing, and they're turning up. Hey, look, I've called that down right here. Look, bang, and then I called it up. I called this one. So, um, um, yeah, I think tankers are sort of trying to bottom right now. I think they're trying to bottom and turn up, but I think that we're going to get a credit contraction pull in the whole market, and I think they're going to be exposed to this a little bit. Um, I don't. They fought against it pretty well here. I'm a little too scared to go long tankers today before the weekend, and I want to see if we get a pull down and see if the tankers get pulled down with it. And if we start getting pulled down and the tankers are going up against it, I'm gonna like them. I'm gonna like them right now, and I want to see all the tankers doing that at the same time against a down move. For me to want to go long on them right now, but if they're pulling down with the crash, I'm gonna like them at the reversal point if we can find it. And so yeah, Frontline, it's a weaker chart than TNK. I don't like it as much as the TNK chart. I think TNK is the solid blue chip chart, and I think Nordic American is probably the hypiest crude fleet, and then EuroNav is EURN, and EuroNav is looks good too. So yeah, the big ones, EuroNav and Frontline and TNK, those ones all are sort of yeah. So yeah, I was calling it down on this one too, and so this is a hypey peak, and so you expect a little reversal, and this is a bigger reversal uh, than probably should have been expected, and there might be a little more down actually to go, and then that should give once we get this peak and sort of a low, we should really get to see the angle of how they look right now, and they look pretty good. I mean, there's not a whole lot of things that are up net up through the whole crash, and these tankers are up and they're at a low price now. I think there's going to be a lower price coming. And so, yeah, you're on a front line. I like OK. I like TNK better. And DHT and Nordic are very interesting. And then we can take a gander at some product tankers and see what those look like right now. Because I haven't looked at these in maybe a week. And here's Scorpio. So Scorpio is a big product fleet, and it's been losing value kind of long term over the last couple of years. And it got a little boost here. It got a little boost. STNG Scorpio. It's a fun ticker. So it came down with the crash and it rebounded slowly, but it got a hypey peak here. And I think that's very interesting for it to get a hypey peak because this is a product fleet. It's not a crude fleet, but you can use product tankers to store crude if it becomes necessary. But also just the crude fleets being used for storage is still good for the product fleets because there's There's just less, there's less tankers available in general, and so the product fleets can ship crude, they can store crude, and so it's better for all the tankers. And depending on how much the oversupply it is, say in a week from now, I think if it's a big oversupply, the product tankers may have a surprise up. But right now the product tanker charts are not looking as good as the crude charts. I like the crude charts much better, and that makes sense because it's a crude oil oversupply, and the crude tankers are the first ones that are going to get all the crude oil. Um, and right now it looks like the oversupply is decreasing, so I don't like the product tankers as much as the crude. But this is Scorpio, and they're about flat through the crash, I guess. And so that doesn't look too exciting actually to me right now. And let's look at like PYX, the Pyxis Tankers. Is this? Oh, I don't know if this is the right stock chart. I don't think so. Wait, let me check what the ticker is. So yeah, this is Pyxis Tankers PXS, and this is a Greek fleet. That's a product fleet, and they are not looking super hot. I mean, they're kind of hanging on, but they don't look well. I mean, this is a good move. This is a good move up here. And what did it go to? Well, 66 cents to, and sort of. I mean, really, just to here, I guess. It went like 2x. Okay, so it went 2x, and it's not coming down as much here. And it's a small company, so this might be an interesting one to take a look at. As far as a product tanker fleet that's small and volatile and kind of interesting. And then Top's Top Ships is they're doing like public offerings, and they're doing weird contractual stuff, and their balance sheet's ugly. And I mean, yeah, this I don't know. I just I just forget about that one. And what's Tsakos is TNP, right? Yeah, Tsakos is TNP, and this is a Greek fleet that has a crude and product, and they're looking pretty good. Let's see. So, uh, yeah, I mean, that looks pretty good. So these guys are Mediterranean, and they got kind of a later start, and it's a mixed fleet, and so this is a good looking chart. And they tried to swing up, and it looks like all the tankers are getting kind of a move down at the moment. And so I think that this down move is going to be pulling the tankers down a little bit, and I'll be looking for an entry point. And so this one's pretty interesting. I mean, it got an early jump, 1.7 to it's not that big of a swing. So I mean, it's more like this. Yeah, it's not that big. Two to it went more than 2x from way back here to up here. So I don't think that's quite as jumpy as maybe Nordic American Tanker or maybe double hull tankers or something like that. And it's kind of a mixed fleet too. So if I want product tankers, I would probably be looking at Pyxis or Scorpio for a big one or a little one. And this one's kind of mixed up. Oh, and then Ardmore is. Hold on one sec. Yeah, it's Ardmore Shipping Corp, ASC, and this is a product tanker fleet. Shipping Corp doesn't really say what their fleet looks like, but this is a product fleet, and they got a big pop here at the end. And so this is actually a pretty interesting one. And what's the actual numbers here? 4 to 8. Yeah, okay. So it went kind of 2x, and it got some late action. So as far as a product fleet, this is another interesting product fleet. Where did the crash start? Yeah, so it went down first at the beginning of the crash. And so it's not up over the length of the crash, but the product fleet started getting a jump later. Right now, I think the crude fleets are looking more interesting than the product fleets. So back to TNK. What are the actual numbers here? 12 to. Okay, so it went more than 2x from the beginning of the crash, but it's been going up the whole time. So I think this is less less volatile, and I think this is the strongest chart for a general long. As far as a company that I want to hold for the next 3 months or something, if there's a good entry point here, and that seems like a spot to stay in. But most likely, I'm going to swing trade these things probably twice more in the next month. I think we're going to get another up move, and then I have to see where we are. But maybe T and K is less exciting on the up here, and maybe something like Nordic American or Double Hull would have a higher kind of hypey upside for a swing trade. But well, I mean, these tankers are dividend stocks, and so that's an interesting thing to think about here. But we're in a credit contraction cycle now for another, who knows, maybe a month, kind of a month outlook on the credit contraction cycle. And so we could get ups and downs, volatile, crazy stuff. The credit contraction cycles are really hard to trade. And then when we switch out into an expansion. Man, the tanker. Okay, so here's kind of the idea on the expansion cycle is generally energy does really well in an expansion cycle, but most expansion cycles are in a bull market and it's inflationary. And what we need to look at, I guess, for that, for the oil and for the tankers is what are the interest rates? If interest rates are headed down into next month, if it looks like we're going to negative interest rates, that's going to be big down pressure on the oil industry, which would probably be good for the tankers. And if we get higher interest rates, that's going to be good for the whole stock market and for the oil companies and for oil prices. So basically, lower interest rates would be better for the tankers, more so than for the other energy companies and the oil itself. And so that's a huge thing to watch, out over the next month or something is the interest rates. And does it look like, commodities are going to be more deflationary if we get lower interest rates, or if we get higher interest rates, more inflationary. And then the oil companies and the oil itself would be more interesting. But right now it looks, I mean, the interest rate futures have been pricing in, or the U.S. Treasury bond futures have been pricing in negative interest rates. And so it looks like we're headed to zero or negative interest rates, which would be good for the tankers. And as far as looking at these as dividend stocks, it's just so volatile right now. And I mean, it's just like a 1 month outlook to see how they perform through this credit contraction cycle, and then a few months to see how they perform over an expansion, and then the oversupply kind of dies off, and then we'll get a different cycle after that. And so looking at these as a long-term dividend investment, I think is not really what I'm thinking at all. And this is not investment advice, but just the dividend stocks in general, if we're in a deflationary environment, which has downside risk to the stock market, which it looks like we are, dividend stocks are not safe at all. Like, those dividend stocks can drop hugely in price. And when that happens, especially if they're having solvency issues, like ExxonMobil, for instance, is probably the biggest solvency risk of any of the oil companies, the big oil companies. And when you get into that solvency risk situation, the dividends come down, the stock prices come down, and so it's not a safe bet to assume you're going to get dividend payouts, because that's not how it works on the backside of a bubble and credit contractions. And for these oil tankers, the dividends are way, way more volatile. Like, they'll go from close to zero to way up. And, when the oil prices were at all-time highs, these had pretty good dividend prices. And the dividends are less of a thing right now. The oil price is really low and all this volatility. And so, yeah, tricky trades. And not today. Nope, not looking at this today. I want to see if the S&P comes down, and I want to see if the tankers come down with the S&P, and then I'll be. I mean, this thing wants to bottom. It wants to bottom, but I think it's going to get pulled down a little bit more, and then I'm going to like it a whole lot. And it could, it could do one bounce, and it could do another pull down, and then switch into another cycle kind of thing. So I'm looking at maybe two, like a swing trading long here soon, and then sort of a real bottom when we switch into the next cycle. And yeah, and it's going to be hard to. I mean, it's the big inflation versus deflation debate, and man, if it's inflationary, like really inflationary, it's completely separate conditions over sort of an expansion phase in a deflationary environment. So we'll revisit that later, but please hit up my playlist and check out my other oil videos. I explain a bunch of stuff and go into each tanker company, all of their fleets, and who's doing scrubbers and who's doing low sulfur fuels and all that good stuff, and all the balance sheets. Like DHT has bad balance sheets, and Nordic American Tankers doesn't want to do scrubbers, and um, all that kind of stuff. I think most of the balance sheets and the scrubber stuff is less important, and it has a whole lot to do with just the oversupply of oil, and that's just a short-term thing that we're looking at here. And I don't think the dividends are a big deal either at the moment. Just kind of swing trading these crazy things, and so that's the look, and happy trading.